Hey, thanks everybody for joining us today here at Sunnyside. It's Fall Color Winter Interest Day. I'd like to introduce Simone from the Evelyn Clinic. They're nice enough to sponsor our class today.
Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the class. On behalf of the Everett Clinic and everyone here at Sunnyside Nursery, we're very happy you were able to join us. At the Everett Clinic, we're proud to have been serving the families of the Pacific Northwest for almost 100 years now. Founded in 1924, our mission is to enable patients to live healthier, happier lives. We offer high-quality family care, specialty, and surgical, as well as urgent care walk-in clinics. We now have locations all the way from Bellingham down to Puyallup, so we're always close to home, and we're here to care for the whole you. One other quick reminder for those of you who are enrolled in Medicare, the Medicare annual enrollment period starts in less than a week. That period runs October 15th to December 7th, and this is your time every year to evaluate your plans and make sure you're still getting the most out of Medicare. We know that Medicare can be confusing. That's why we offer education and resources to help you make an informed plan decision for 2022. You can learn more at everettclinic.com/Medicare. You can register there to attend one of our online classes, just like you're doing today. Or we can connect you with a local trusted insurance agent, and they can sit down with you and really get into the nitty-gritty and make a personalized plan comparison for you, so you can make sure you have the right plan for your health needs and budget. With that, I'd like to turn it back over to Trevor and enjoy the rest of the class. Thanks again for joining us.
Thank you, Simone. Everett Clinic is but 2 blocks from my house, so that's where I go as well. That's a great local medical provider. So thanks, Simone, for joining us. So today we got Fall Color Winter Interest. I have to say hi. This is Lola here, in case you're going to wonder who her name is. So she's going to hang out. We have 2 faces in the classroom today instead of just me. So thanks again. So if we look at Fall Color, I hope everybody got a chance to get the handout. We sent that out on email. It's on the website. Let us know if you still need it. That's a quick little list of some things that I would think about planting here for Fall Color, Winter Interest, things that will kind of shine in the garden here over the dormant months as we get a little grayer, a little wetter, and head towards the winter season. So hopefully get the handout. I just wanted to mention a couple things, some general things, and I'll jump down here and we're going to run a PowerPoint and show you some pictures, some of my favorite things for fall. But if we mention a couple things, the year-round landscape is always the question at the nursery. Customer after customer wanting their yard to look good 12 months out of the year. We're pretty blessed here with our maritime climate. We're typically not very cold in the winter. We can have a lot of cool things. There's a wide range of things that bloom in the winter, but certainly stopping down at the nursery this time of year is going to allow you to see some plants that are looking spectacular here for fall. And as we head in towards winter. Fall color, my favorite time of the year. I love fall color season. All the deciduous plants you can see behind me here starting to turn color here as we head into October, November. I'll get a lot of questions from customers, and there'll probably be a couple in the chat room, so I'll get it right now. Why does my yard not turn color like when I drive out and see nature? The answer is water, to be honest with you. If I drive out here and go up Highway 2 or up I-90 and head up into the foothills or the mountains here in the fall, I'm going to see the brightest of reds, the brightest of oranges, all the yellows, because those plants are left to fend for themselves. And frankly, if you have a landscape in town, maybe an irrigation system, you're watering too much, that is going to end your fall color a little quicker. If you tend to get a lot of browns, a lot of yellows, not the vivid colors, you're probably watering a little bit too much late into the season. You want to let the landscape harden off as we get into late August into September. Yes, we're still typically dry. We're not going to watch our yard die the last month of the summer, but we want to make sure we don't overwater. If we overwater, we're going to encourage growth. We don't fertilize in the fall for the same reason. Then we get the color, we get the brown, we get the yellow. We just don't get the bright, vivid colors like nature intended for us. So keep that in mind. This time of year, the classes I do year round, you can almost spring and summer and fall, we can kind of cover year-round interest in the series of classes we do here. This one, a little bit of conifers, some winter blooms, some fragrance, some evergreens, a little bit of everything in this one. So this is a class here as you go into winter, you're walking out in your landscape and you're seeing all the perennials went brown and the trees have lost their leaves. You know, what do I have left to enjoy? The berries, the barks, some evergreen plants, and certainly, again, some things that will bloom in the winter. So as we look at the slides here, you know, I'll mention, pay attention to twig colors and bark interest. Certain plants that have berries here for the fall keep the birds happy and look very attractive in the landscape. And there is a surprising amount of plants that will bloom here in the winter, and frankly, and provide some fragrance as well. So that's a big one here in the Pacific Northwest for the winter. We've got a lot of options for that as well. So I'm going to dive in here. Give me 1 second. Try not to jostle the screen here, and I'm going to start my slideshow. Give me 1 second. So there's me, in case you forgot already. Let me see if I can sit here and we can still see Lola and some plants, and you can still see my head. So if we go through some of the slides here, you know, conifer class we have coming up here in just a couple weeks, so I won't spend a lot of time on conifers, but as you look at these few photographs as an example, again, structure, texture, a lot of really bright colors. We'll go through a bazillion of those here in the class coming up in 2 weeks. But don't forget about the evergreens. You know, we are the evergreen state here in Washington, and we've got a lot of options for golds and blues and silvers, and again, a plethora of different textures that we can utilize in the landscape as well. My own yard, you know, a lot of times the conifers, yes, you see them in the spring and the summer, but now as plants are going dormant, they really pop out with the colors in my own yard and Everett as well. So there's a couple. The Chief Joseph is the one that turns bright gold for the entire winter. That's green in the growing season, but that'll turn bright gold here for the winter months. Something like Korean fir icebreaker gives me almost that flocked Christmas tree look with the silver and the twisted needles. Something simple like arborvitae, fire chief. I've got my orange, you know, really rusty orange color for the fall. And if you haven't tried cryptomerias, that's one, I think the texture is very unique. We've got a lot of really cool Japanese cedars around where you can get some color in the winter, some presence, some structure, but also a very interesting texture depending on what your taste is. Now, if we look at some broadleaf evergreens, you know, we'll start kind of going through some of those. We've got a lot of options up here for our gardens in Western Washington that we keep our leaves in the winter, show some color. A lot of these will turn, the foliage will turn color for the winter, but not drop. So we're not deciduous. We're going to keep our leaves through the entire season. Even a simple plant like some of the newer blueberries, there's some great varieties out now, bountiful blue, pink icing, sunshine blue. I could keep going, but there's some great edible blueberries that look like very attractive shrubs. You know, high bush blueberry, where we would go pick at the farms, is always at the top of the fall color list. You know, those are spectacular here as we go into fall. These evergreen ones will give me the purples, the reds, sometimes a little turquoise, but I'll hold my foliage. I won't lose that for the entire winter. So there's a couple blueberry options. If we look at something that blooms in the winter, an interesting plant like gravegelia. I see more and more of these around gardens in my neighborhood. I know quite a few gardening friends that have these now. You can tell by that flower, it's a favorite of the hummingbirds. You know, that's a great flower with the color, the tube, the nectar source. But this is a plant, you know, be real careful of hardiness. There's a lot of different gravelias around. If you look closely, a lot of times we'll have these available right coming after the holidays. These are plants that would bloom at some point over the winter, a good portion of them, depending on what size you're looking for, but really pay attention to the hardiness. Zone 7, zone 8, you're typically okay. There's a number of gravelias that would be zone 9 that can't take frost. So be real careful when you choose your gravelia selection. If we kind of look at the tail end of winter, you know, if we're calling this fall color winter interest, and winter is technically till what, March 21st. So there's a few things I put on here as we get into next late February, early March that we'll start to see start to bloom, you know, coming right out that late part of winter, a great little pollen source for a lot of our pollinators to get them going in the yard. If we look at a simple plant like barberry, yes, there's a lot of deciduous ones. Those are turning great color now, but the evergreen ones, a lot of times will turn red for the entire winter, hold their leaves, and then I get orange or yellow flower coming out early in the season next year. So if we look at Darwin's barberry, that's a little thorny guy. Yes, it's a little prickly. Got a nice bright orange flower on that, but I'm going to keep my foliage. Warty barberry's got some lethal thorns. You can see the picture there. That's one we put underneath the bedroom window for the children so they don't sneak out at night. If we look at a couple bloomers, so right now here at the nursery, the first of our camellias are blooming. So we have fall camellias or Camellia sasanqua. We can get a lot of different colors, whites, pinks, reds. You might have seen Yuletide around, winter snowman. We've got a pretty good selection. These are plants that, depending on how our fall weather goes, will typically start in November and December and January and go into that winter months. Great one again for the hummingbirds and nectar source in the winter. But it's a nice plant, you know, for that part shade, part sun to shade that we can get some bloom in the winter. It's nice to walk outside and see a camellia flowering in winter saying, yes, spring is coming here at some point here on a gray day. Strawberry tree on the right is in the arbutus family. So that's close relative to our native madrones. Interesting red peely bark that keeps its leaves. Those bloom in the fall. So they would be blooming the last month or so and producing those strawberry-like fruit. This is not a strawberry. They're not poisonous, but this is not the edible strawberry we would pick at the grocery store. It looks a lot like that. The wildlife will like you for having them. It's a great specimen plant for full sun. Good drainage is a must, but that's a really easy plant to grow that would keep its leaves in the winter and look interesting. If we look at some more broadleafs, you know, for me, I love yellow. You know, we've got some great yellow options around here for foliage. Other plants, other folks don't like yellow. If it's not your thing, we can get some different colors in there. But I'm always looking for something with so much green here in our native areas and so many evergreens. You know, what can I utilize for shrubs that are going to pop in the wintertime? Something like Mexican orange, Sundance is always bright yellow, lime green. That's always going to look sharp year round in the yard. A lot of the nandinas, or what we call heavenly bamboos, I can pick reds, I can go more purplish burgundy, I can go a little lighter towards a coppery tone. Again, holding my leaves in the winter, but having a really attractive plant with some foliage color that I can enjoy over the winter and continue through the growing season. If we look at a couple real simple ones, you know, rhodies and azaleas, we don't want to forget about our easy, you know, kind of tried and true Western Washington plants. You know, a lot of folks come down in the spring, you know, purchase a rhododendron or azalea. Yes, they all have beautiful flowers. Yes, they all grow great here. But I wish sometimes you'd think, you know, what does this do in the wintertime? Because a lot of times if you came, you know, to me here at the nursery and said, hey, I'm looking for a good red azalea, you know, we'll have 6 or 7 options. But if I choose one like the Azalea Johanna over there, that is one that I'll get a really nice big red flower on, just like they all do in spring. A nice, attractive, easy to grow azalea. But when we get to winter, my plant will turn purplish burgundy color, not lose its leaves. So now I've added that whole other season of interest where I can look out and see some really nice foliage color. You can see that one there I found even with some snow on the ground. So, I mean, that's dead of the winter, and I've got a really attractive, bright foliage to look at. Same with the rhododendrons. You know, there's great variegated rhododendrons. We've got a few of those around. But a real simple one like PJM is one that's, again, a picture from January. You would see your PJM with a deep mahogany purplish color. Flower buds are sitting there ready to go for spring again when we bloom, but that's, again, a nice contrast plant that we could utilize with all the green backdrop we have around here. We look at a couple winter bloomers. You know, Daphne odora is our winter Daphne. You know, that's a plant that would bloom in late January, February into March. It smells delicious. That's a fragrant one. Great for part sun, part shade. We need to have good drainage with Daphne. Be real careful where you plant those. They can't be too wet. So as long as we're careful with that, easy plant to grow. But Daphne, you'll see a lot of options. You know, again, the winter bloomers do how much variegation do I want in the leaves? Maybe, again, you don't like yellow like I do. Get the green version. But either way, you're going to have a really easy to grow plant that's going to have reliable winter bloom and great fragrance to enjoy as well. On the other side, there is a plant called Distilium that maybe you haven't seen quite as much. In essence, this is an evergreen witch hazel. This is a plant, you can see some nice colorful leaves. This would bloom in December and January, little spidery red flowers right along the stems, but a very useful plant for a lot of locations. That's a plant we can do in sun and shade, wet, dry. It's one of those plants we hardly ever use the word bulletproof around here, but that one we could grow in quite a few areas in the garden and have great success with. There's a number of different varieties. This particular one is called Cinnamon Girl, if you like the little purplish cast to it. But we have linebacker, we've got swing low, we've got some other flavors around here as well, depending on how much height you want to use. If we look at some more foliage plants, you know, hollies are coming up here in the winter. English holly, I think, has finally made it to the noxious weed list here in Western Washington. If it's not, it should be. But we try to get different hollies that maybe don't get quite as big or propagate themselves quite as easily. If we look at a plant like osmanthus, there's goshiki, beautiful variegation. We have one called party lights, if you like more pink in it. Those are options that they call false holly or holly-leafed osmanthus. Those are easy to grow evergreens, you know, that we don't have to do much except maybe shear them once in a while. We've got a really attractive plant year round, but again, in the winter with the variegations really going to pop in the landscape. If we look at the other one, there's one called scallywag, you know, kind of the pirate holly, right? That is one that's a little dwarf holly without berries that will never get berries on it, but that'll only grow 2 or 3 feet tall and wide, but that plant will turn dark purple for the winter. So I've got a dark stem, really nice, attractive purple foliage to enjoy in the winter. Then I'm right back to green come springtime. If we again look at winter bloomers, sarcococa, it's one of those tongue twisters with way too many C's and vowels in it, but that's a really easy to grow plant here for Western Washington. We go through an awful lot of these with our base customers. Great shade plant or morning sun plant. These pictures would be taken in January, February. Delicious vanilla fragrance. These are plants that are going to bloom after the holidays all the way into spring. You won't see the flowers quite as much. They're small and white down the stems, but boy, you open the door, like at my house, I've got them around my patio on the shade side. We open that sliding door in the wintertime, you're going to have that sweet fragrance just blowing right into the house. That's a really good fragrant plant for the winter. Humulus would be a variety if we want to stay low, something maybe just a foot and a half tall. If we want something a little taller, we can get confusa, which I didn't picture, but same leaf, flower, 3 or 4 feet tall, or russifolia would get us up 5 or 6 feet tall. So we've got some height options for those. If we look at a plant like leucothaway, another evergreen that turns color in the winter, you know, that's a great native type plant, coast leucothaway, that we can use in our part sun, part shade, or even sun gardens that will give me that rich red to purple foliage over the winter. Those bloom in spring, it looks great year round, but in this class, particularly in the wintertime, again, I can add some of that foliage pop to some of my shrubs. Mahonias are a plant that we have native here. So Oregon grape or mahonia is a plant that typically our native ones don't bloom till that late February, March, April timeframe. But we have a lot of these hybrid mahonias where plant collectors have brought them in from Asia or crossed different varieties to give us some options. If we kind of go through the mahonia world, you know, I planted this in my yard because of the hummingbirds. This is one that they always bloom fall, winter into spring, depending on the variety. But I would have a great natural nectar source, that bright yellow flower for the hummingbirds to enjoy, and, you know, to again add a little bit of flower to the winter landscape. Soft caress is the first one to bloom, so that would be blooming here pretty quick, November into December. It's a great container plant too. If you like a little part shade container specimen, that's a great little container plant, but a nice manageable size Oregon grape that's not quite as prickly. They call that soft caress because it does have a little softer foliage. If we look at some taller ones, dark star is more like some of our native things where we're going to have creeping mahonia, a little bit lower. That would be blooming a little later in the winter, early spring, but the same nice foliage color, same nice yellow flower, and same natural nectar source for the hummingbirds. Charity is a big one. You know, we get charity, winter sun, Lionel de Fortescue. There's a bunch of varieties of these media type mahonias that get a little larger, you know, 8, 10, even 12 feet on an old specimen. It makes even a small tree, but they're evergreen. They bloom extremely heavy over the winter. Typically, those are going to be in that December, January, February time frame. So again, a little bit of nectar for the hummingbirds, but a very good, reliable winter bloomer. A couple other plants, polygala, you know, is a little ground covering plant. Not too invasive. We'll have these in coming out of winter. We don't have any right now, but that's a little plant that again offers some fragrance and typically starts blooming in that February into March time frame. It is a really cool little plant. It's not one you'll find around a lot of places, but we do have a bunch booked to come in. They'll probably be here about bloom time, say early February 2022, if you like to leave your name. I always mention Pieris, you know, in this class. You see the passion frost is pictured there with the flowers. Now that, of course, is like next March when it blooms. But I always mention Pieris because, again, it's a really easy shrub in our climate, maritime. I picked passion frost for a reason because of the variegated foliage. So again, not something just green, but now I've got a really nice variegated leaf to add some interest. And Pieris in the winter, I'm going to see those little flower buds dangling, you know, right on the tips of the branches that'll open that next spring. So to me, that's one of those shrubs that's always brings a smile to my face. I walk outside, December, January, you can see the flower buds. You're like, yes, spring is coming here at some point. And then boom, we open up white flower, pink flower, or red flower, depending on the variety we choose. We always look at heathers. You know, again, we've got the Scots heather on the left there, the firefly, the calunas. Those will give me the red foliage, orange foliage, gold foliage, a lot of fun winter color and texture. Those typically bloom in the summer, but I would have the really cool foliage to enjoy over the winter months. And then on the right, we have our heaths or ericas, more Irish style. Those would be blooming now. Ours are just starting to flower here in November. And that is one of those easy little low filler plants that I can enjoy bloom on heathers all the way through the winter into March. So we call them, some people call them winter heathers, fall heather. You can call them whatever you want, but Mediterranean pink, Kramer's rose, matted white, there's a lot of varieties that would offer me that consistent flower no matter how cold we get through these dormant winter months. Now, if we shift to some fall color, a little bit of deciduous things, we'll show you a few of these real quick. We've got plants like hydrangeas. So if we look at a hydrangea right now, yes, the flowers are drying, but yes, I think they still look cool. You know, oak leaf hydrangea is a plant that will get spectacular fall color on. The flowers will be starting to turn reds and pinks right now as we're getting through the late summer. But certainly for bark interest with the peely bark and the fall color, oak leaf hydrangea, I think kind of stands aside as a fall plant versus our other typical hydrangeas up here. I always put PG hydrangea on there because I know mine is still blooming. You know, we're into mid-October here and I've still got flowers on mine. They're turning dark colors. You know, that's an interesting plant that will bloom the entire summer, turn nice yellow in the fall as it drops its leaves, but offer me some flower power here as we get into early fall as well. We look at some plants with berries. You know, these are two of our best-selling plants the last couple of years here in the fall. We look at these hybrid snowberries, so kind of a native or nativar. If you were at our nativar class a few weeks back, these are plants that would look like our native snowberry, but produce a little bit heavier and I think look a little nicer in an ornamental landscape. Both of these are from Bailey's first editions shrub programs, both fabulous shrubs, but Candy would give me the pink, Galaxy gives me the white, you know, and that's an easy plant that right now I would be seeing massive sprays that are loaded with those berries here as we head into fall to add a little bit of interest. We look at a couple others here, aronia or chokecherry. You know, that's a plant that A, turns beautiful color in the fall, and B, after it blooms in summer, produces those little miniature cherries or berries for the wildlife. So that'd be a plant the birds would love you to have, some of the squirrels and things that like to harvest a little bit in the fall. But we would have great fall color mixed with really attractive black or red berries as those start to produce here late summer, fall, and then into winter. Sumac is always an easy one. You know, if you've driven up east of the mountains a little bit around here, you know, sumac is a plant that always turns spectacular fall color. You know, we had a huge one at our family place in Cleellum across the mountains. We sell them over here as well. I always bring tiger eyes up in the slideshow here for fall because that's the one that will glow lime green, gold all through the growing season. Now it's starting to turn the oranges, the reds, and the darker colors. So that one to me, again, more of a spring, summer foliage color and having a great fall color as well. A couple dead of the winter bloomers. You know, contorted filbert is a plant that we use around here for the interesting twisting bark, and the catkins that'll drop down in February, usually coming after the holidays. So this one blooms in the winter, but also has a really interesting silhouette with the contorted branches. Black dragon, I think, is one of the better ones that are immune to filbert blight. So if you don't want to mess with the chance of disease, you know, get some of these new ones, red majestic, black dragon, all these would be more immune to the filbert blight and offer me a darker foliage as well. You know, that's really pretty. That picture there, probably taken about mid-late February. I'd be having those catkins come down, they're pink. And then I get that deep, dark purple foliage that leaves out and then fades into green as we get into spring, but a really attractive plant for texture in the winter. Pink Dawn Viburnum is a larger shrub. You know, we got a bunch of these in now. This is a plant that offers fragrance. If you like pink, it's got great bloom. That would start blooming here in November and continue to bloom off and on all the way into March of next spring. So this is a plant on bare wood that I would see those really nice pink flowers come out, walk out in my yard on a nice day here over winter, and I would get the great fragrance too. Give some room to those two. Those aren't little 2-3 foot shrubs we prune into little meatballs. These are the ones we want to let develop some structure. So both of these down the road, I would say up there in the 8, 10, you know, maybe even 12 foot when we get a really old specimen. Yes, they can be pruned, but at least give them a good 6, 8 feet to get you some size and some structure. A couple other winter bloomers, Chinese paper bush, you know, is a plant called edgeworthia that we get in here over winter. That's a plant more for shade than sun. We want morning sun only or shade for that. But that plant blooms in January, February with those gold clusters. Again, great fragrance on that one. That's one, again, we'll get some nice smell during the dead of the winter time when that blooms. You can find orange and red rarely. We always try to find a few. We usually always have yellow ones around though, and those are just as nice. Buttercup winter hazel is another one, not witch hazel, but winter hazel is a little bit different. This is a plant we have on the property here. A lot of folks that drive in February and early March see ours blooming on the side of the road and ask, what is that? I need one. Because that is a plant that throws out a lot of yellow flower power right towards that tail end of winter again for a little interest. Fothergilla, you know, honestly, is one of my favorite shrubs. I wish more people would purchase them because we hardly sell many a year, but I think more should discover it. Fothergilla is a top 5 fall color plant to me that looks native. It's got every color in the rainbow when those turn. Nice growth habit that has a fragrant white flower and blooms in the spring as well. But Fothergilla, if you like fall color, that's a really nice plant to find a little spot to tuck in a shrub to enjoy a pop of fall color. Hypericum, some people call this floral berry now. This isn't our little ground cover they call St. John's wort. These are shrubby hypericums that were bred for these little hips or berries. You know, I put pumpkin on there. We could get red, orange, rose, champagne colored, black. I think they come in pretty much every color in the rainbow now. But this is a plant that you can see. That's probably a picture from September. So we have yellow flower, late season, and then we get these beautiful hips or berries on them. They're great for cut arrangements, bringing inside if you add a little fall color to your flower arrangements, but certainly a really attractive shrub for the fall season when you look out and see all those bright berries on there. Speaking of, you know, I'm a Seattleite. My poor Huskies aren't so well this year, but I always call that husky berry. I've got the purple berries there on the beautyberry. That's Japanese beautyberry, or what we call calicarpa. So that's another plant we see around here, not native, looks a little native with the growth habit, but that's one we would get those shiny metallic berries on here for fall color. Yellow leaves with those bright metallic purple berries. They'll hang on a little bit into the winter for some interest, but certainly a a one-of-a-kind plant to me. I don't think you're going to see a brighter purple berry on anything available for the landscape. I love 9-bark on the side there. I've got one in my garden. We go through a lot of 9-barks around here, some different varieties. Yes, they get great fall color. They look good all year. But in the wintertime, I've got some great bark on them. Those are ones that'll peel, look a little like birch sometimes. You can get trees that don't grow super big. A lot of times shrubs will have multiple stems. But to me, that's another plant that's attractive year-round and very, very easy to grow. Twig dogwoods, you know, if you got the dead of winter, I mean, that picture is right there in the dead of winter, and I've got some bright twigs to look at. I can do yellow, I can do orange, I can do red, and I can do all kinds of varieties of twig dogwood. This is a plant I would invite you to explore your options, you know, different foliages, variegation, yellow, foliage, you know, pick your twig color. So in the wintertime, I use these a lot in my own yard because, again, I like driving home anytime in the dead of winter, and on my bank, I've got yellow, red, and orange all mixed together. It looks great during the wintertime. We can cut the twigs, use them in Christmas wreaths, you know, or arrangements kind of thing. But a very easy plant to grow. And twig dogwood is one that is native. You know, we have native twig dogwoods all over Western Washington, and something that will take wet. That's a huge deal with a lot of gardeners. This is a plant, if you hate to say, if you drove out to the freeway ditch or the side of the road here and there, you're going to see native twig dogwoods thriving on their own because they don't mind the heavier soil, perhaps the filling up with water in the winter months, but I still have that beautiful twig color to enjoy. A couple trees, we have something like witch hazel. That's the one in my backyard. And we have witch hazel called Arnold Promise. Now this would be blooming, again, you can see the snow on the ground. Mine typically is starting to open by mid-late January. I could have red witch hazel, yellow witch hazel, or orange witch hazel. The yellows tend to smell good if you like the fragrance. The other two colors are fabulous too. But if I'm looking for a, you know, smallish tree, large shrub, witch hazel is a great winter bloomer if you're looking for a specimen piece. This is a little bigger plant than some of the stuff we've looked at so far, but certainly is something to consider. Fabulous fall color. Mine is turning orange, red, yellow, and every shade in between right now. And then I'll lose all those leaves after the holidays, starting in January. We'll look out the window and start to see the yellow spidery flowers come out, and off we go for another season. Same with the cornus moss. You know, this is what we call cornelian cherry, but it's in the dogwood family. That's another early bloomer that's yellow. So this is one that we would see the flowers on those more like in February to early March. And we do get a little cherry on there, a little fruit that develops later in the summer. But that's another one, if we were looking for that really early pop of color or something bright, cornus moss or the cornelian cherry would be a great choice. Now, you know me, I'm a maple lover. Well, I'm the maple addict around here, so I couldn't do a fall color class without mentioning Japanese maples. You could pick any variety of Japanese maple. It's going to turn great color in the fall. Let's be honest. You know, I don't need to go through all 150 that we carry around here. So look at your color. You can pick sometimes very specifically. I'd like yellow. I'd like orange. I'd like red, and have a pretty reliable color that you want, depending on the variety or cultivar you choose. The few that I put in this show are going to show off bark color as well. So a couple that I mentioned, Bihu is one they call Beautiful Mountain Range in Japan. And if I wanted something more yellow to orange to coral, you can see how bright the wood is on the tree. That makes quite a nice statement in the part shade or shade garden. We don't want to plant Bihu out in absolutely full sun. On the other side, there's the coral bark. You know, and keep in mind, there's a lot of varieties of coral bark out there to be had. Pay attention to your size, because coral bark maples, probably one of the larger Japanese maples we carry. If I buy plain old Sengukaku, that's going to get up 25 feet tall. That might be not quite what you're thinking. We can get winter flame, Akakawahime. There's other varieties of that we don't have to get quite as large, but great fall color, nice foliage in the season, but in the wintertime, that's what I have to look at. I've got really attractive bark color on any of the coral bark maples. If we look at some larger trees, you know, as we kind of get into barks, you know, nothing beats the peely white bark of the birch. You know, we get into wintertime and we've got that bare birch tree out in the yard. We've got all that peely bark going on it with the bright white. You know, think Yellowstone, think Yosemite, all the fun parks around where we see a lot of the native birches, Himalayan birch, canoe birch, paper birch, river birch. All these types of birches are great trees, but they'll take up some really nice winter interest with the bark they have on them. Stewartia on the right there, I hope you folks will look out. You know, if you're looking for a flowering tree, Stewartia is another tree I would put on my top 5 list for all year round. It's slow growing. It's not the cheapest thing because they grow slow, but it's a fabulous tree for all seasons. Stewartia, you can see great bark in the wintertime, awesome fall color when it sheds its leaves, and those bloom in the summer. So a little bit different flower. They almost look like a white camellia when those bloom. Japanese Stewartia, we can do tall Stewartia, we can do Korean Stewartia. There's a number of different species we'll carry around here, depending on how big you want it to get. But certainly don't forget about, to me, a 4-season tree like Stewartia. Paperbark Maple, you know, you can see by the close-up there on the bark, how cool is that in the wintertime? You know, I turn great color in the fall on Paperbark Maple, get that cinnamon brown, peely bark, a very interesting type shade tree to grow, and not super big. You know, a lot of times maples for small city yards here maybe get 30, 40 feet. You know, paperbark is a tree I feel pretty comfortable you keep in like 25 feet by 25 feet. That's a little bit smaller one that, again, would offer me the season interest of the winter as well with that cool bark. Pacific Fire is a tree we sell a lot of around here. You know, that's a native type vine maple, grows all over our habitat here in Western Washington. But Pacific Fire is one we simply have added in the bark color. So you'll find those available at the nurseries right now, or in the wintertime. Again, I've got great fall color, a nice easy tree during the growing season, but I've got that beautiful coral bark to enjoy during the dormant months. Now, if we look at some flowers, you know, this is, I like my flower power in the winter. I can't remember how many pansies I took home again a couple weeks ago, but it was way too many. Pansies are the one thing to me, pansies and violas. If I want flower power in my pots, in my window box, by the porch, in the garden, you know, these are the two that you're going to plant here in fall. You know, this is something that will freeze up and look like little ice cubes if we get cold, but guess what? It thaws out and here comes some more flowers again. So they don't look like they should last through the winter, but they always do. I would go shopping now and get your pansies and violas. We got a great selection of colors down here that you can add a pop of flower power to your pots, the porch, like I mentioned, baskets. We even get them in little hanging baskets in. It's kind of fun for the wintertime. So look at your pansies and violas. You know, tomorrow I'll be doing bulb class, so I don't want to spend a lot of time on bulbs, but don't forget about bulbs in the winter. There's some great bulbs that we can utilize in our Western Washington gardens that will bloom in the dead of winter. Crocus is always an easy one. I don't know how many crocus I have, but it's way too many hundreds by now. This is a plant, a little bulb you can pop in the ground and get that really low carpet, whites, lavenders, purples, yellows, and a nice mix. The newest one is that orange monarch, really bright. Those are plants that we can put underneath shrubs. You know, plant them in pots. You'll see me plant pot tomorrow. Anywhere in the yard where we get some nice winter sun, kind of wakes them up, enjoy the flower. They go dormant. We'll see you again next year. Those are really easy to naturalize. We have I should have mentioned at the beginning, we have our special guest here, the whistling gardener, Mr. Smith, is back there answering questions during the class. Thank you, Steve. But I will give him credit for giving me the addiction to winter aconites. The first year I was here, what, 12 years ago now? Has it been that much fun? I saw these over in his garden, was like, whoa, what is that? And now I have way too many aconites like Steve does in his house. So aconites is one I'll look out in the middle of winter and see those blooming their hearts out in December and January and February. They're great in shade, really low, but you buy those things, they look like little dead, dried up raisins. You're like, what is he telling me to plant? Throw some in the ground, they'll multiply and naturalize. That's a really cool winter bulb, I think, is gaining some more popularity around here. We got our early daffodils. You know, we'll go through a bazillion of these tomorrow. But if we look at these early daffodils, you know, I'm always looking for stuff that will naturalize. I want to plant a mass of them, 15, 30, 50, or 100. Maybe not 100, but I'd take 50 in one area. But if we plant a mass of those, I'm going to have a really nice display coming out of later winter to early spring of some fabulous flower power with a lot of the daffodils. So teditates, jetfire, jack snipe. I can pick all my colors I want, have a low one, a medium, a tall. Join me tomorrow. We'll talk more about those tomorrow. Last one there is some snowdrops. So these are probably the first two of the early ones. The aconites to me are always up first, but snowdrops and snowflakes will come out there again in that January time frame, blooming through the snow if we have some. You know, those are kind of those spring ephemerals that kind of bring on, here we go, first couple of days of sunshine. Let's get the spring going here at some point. So don't forget about snowdrops and snowflakes as well. Now, if we look at a couple perennials, you know, specifically for fall, I'll just mention a few. You know, there's a lot of things still blooming in my yard, you know, coneflowers and rabechias and on and on and on that still look sharp here through fall until we do get a hard frost. But here's just a couple that I think that really shine in the fall season. Mucdenia, a plant called crimson fans, you know, that is turning color right now in my yard, and at the nursery we have some of these available. You know, this is a low little woodland shady perennial. But yes, it looks good during the spring and the summer after it merges. But now we get to fall, you know, it's Mucdenia's time to shine. You know, that's a plant that turns almost like a maple foliage, bright scarlet red as we head into the colder times here in fall. Anemones are always a fall classic. You know, we get quite a few varieties of anemones around. Wild swans, one that has a little lavender blue on the back, but whites and pinks, singles, doubles. You know, Japanese style anemone is always a plant that's going to start blooming here late August, September, October, November until we have a hard frost in the shade or part shade gardens. A great little fall perennial. Now, if we go to the other end of the winter, you know, this is probably the first perennial I see popping up in that February, March time frame is the wallflowers. Now, be careful with some wallflowers. Again, the hardiness, and the big thing probably up here is drainage. We cannot have wallflowers getting too wet, or we're not going to have them come back too reliably in our yard. If I've got a nice sunny border that's high and dry, you know, consider using some of these wallflowers. You can see winter party and winter passion and winter plum, and I can go on and on. You know, these are plants that will emerge, you know, pretty quickly in the winter time as we start to get a little warmer, and boom, get into bloom probably faster than anything that we have here at the nursery. So a lot of times you come in here in February, that's the one perennial around here that's probably like, oh wow, that's already starting to bloom a little bit. So wallflowers will get you that early spring. Now I have heucheritis. It's not contagious. It's just the addiction to heucheras. I'm the poster child. I'm the president of the fan club these days. So I don't know how many heucheras I have. Those are two I have all over my yard right there. But there's a zillion options. And I would always bring up heucheras of the fall because, again, as a perennial, it's evergreen. So if I like the purples, the reds, the lime, yellow, sweet tea's got some beautiful fall color, all these varieties are going to shine through the winter months. I do a little bit of foliage cleaning late summer. I've got fresh foliage all through the winter time, containers, garden borders, really easy to me to add a pop of foliage color that's nice and low where you want it for a little bit added interest. You know, as an example, I remember when I bought Electra a number of years ago and kind of threw it in my shade, was like, I don't know if I like that one. It's just kind of lime green and yellow in the spring and the summer. Yes, it's still pretty, but now we get to fall and I get those red venations show up through the leaves. It is spectacular through the winter months. You know, hellebores, again, I won't spend a lot of time as we go through the class series here. I'll have a hellebore class coming up here in a few weeks where we'll have hellebores in for the winter. This is the Christmas rose, the Lenten rose. You can call it whatever you want, but this is the one perennial that's evergreen that is really going to bloom for you over the winter. You know, mine are always starting at Christmas and we go all the way into spring, depending on what variety you choose or what species. zillions of options. You know, at a place like ours at Sunnyside, bet you we have 50 different hellebores in here as we get into November, and something we have a really consistent inventory on through the winter. You won't find much of these in the summer. So if you want hellebores, come in the fall, come in the winter, come in early spring, you'll get your selection of the colors you want. Singles, doubles. You'll see some of the newer ones. I put Anna's red, Penny's pink, there's Pippa's purple. They have all kinds of fun names now. But if I look at that picture, yes, the flower's nice, but look really close to the background, the foliage. You know, to me, the rest of the year, I'm going to have a really attractive evergreen perennial with a little bit of variegation on the foliage, or some of those streaking where I can see some cool colors to enjoy all season long, and then get my flowers over the holidays. Epimedium, you know, kind of the same way. This is a great, you know, bulletproof, drought-tolerant shade plant. You know, I use these in the corners of my shade garden, underneath my eaves in the shade, where I can't get much to grow. You know, epimedium is a plant that's evergreen. I would have the red color in the winter. I'd have beautiful bloom come springtime. Lots of different epimediums, whites, yellows, pinks, even orangey ones you can find. There's a lot of options for different epimediums, but if you think of this plant as a nice little low filler that I could have an evergreen on, if I want to cut it back, I do it coming out of winter, and I can enjoy all the flower stalks. I get brand new foliage and it looks brand new again. I don't ever cut mine back every year these days. It's more like every 2 or 3 years just to start them over again, but a really easy plant to grow if you haven't tried epimediums. Euphorbia, same way. Great selection of euphorbias around right now. You know, lots of foliage color. They're evergreen, great for sun, drought tolerant. You know, most of ours right now are going into containers. That's a great choice to use as part of your fall, winter container design. Attractive leaves. I get a really pretty flower, you know, coming out later winter, early spring, and an attractive seed on there as well. So nothing says Christmas more than Rudolph. So you got Rudolph if you like your little red tips. You've got Ascot Rainbow, will give me the variation of color. You'll see bluish white ones down here. Lots of options for fun euphorbias. And grasses. You know, I did a grass class, you know, a few months ago. We kind of talked all about grasses, but don't forget about the grasses in the wintertime. You know, great evergreen grasses provide to me some texture, some motion, some sound, look really attractive in the landscape and in containers. You know, a lot of times I use that orange sedge in just about all my pots that I plant around the landscape because it looks great year round with that orangey, limey color, really attractive in the winter months as well, and doesn't get very big. The sedges like Everlime and Everrest and Evergold, there's lots of options depending on what color you like. Those, again, great container accent plants, or planted as a foundation plant in some sun or some shade, depending on your variety, that will add, again, that winter interest with the growth and the color. A couple of fall grasses, you know, we got lots of options for perennial type grasses. Now, both of these are not evergreen. I want to make sure that's clear. Some other ones will keep our color in the winter. These we'll get to enjoy another month or 6 weeks. Then we go dormant, brown. We can leave them through the winter, see them blow in the wind, have a little noise with them. I do that with a lot of mine. And then we whack them back the 1st of March and let them start over again. But a couple really cool ones, like some of the new blue stems, that's little blue stem and big blue stem. You know, you can see those offering me some pink, some purple, blues, all kinds of colors and texture to the fall landscape. And again, we've got a zillion options still out there for grasses where I'm starting to get my plumage, interesting bloom in the fall here, and then we start to turn the colors and add that season of interest. If we look at a couple little kind of ground cover or container plants, you know, don't forget about wintergreen. That's an easy one to remember. Wintergreen. We're talking about winter interest, so that one you should remember easily. This is a little plant we can grow part shade or part sun as a little ground cover. I would say the majority of ours go out again for winter containers. I'm trying to add something evergreen, some foliage color with that attractive berry. That's the plant we would add into winter pots. A little thriller, little spiller to add on the edge of a container. winter splash would give me that wonderful variegation. So I'm evergreen, but I've got the pinks, the greens, the whites kind of mixed together. I put a close-up of cherry berries on there because that is a massive berry, a little bigger than typical wintergreen. If I really want to see green foliage and have those berries hang down and really pop during the winter months. Something like cyclamens getting harder and harder to find these days. But, you know, fall is all about cyclamen. This is a little perennial plant that's a little bit harder to find these days. But if you plant these in the yard, they'll typically go dormant all through the growing season. They disappear in the heat of the summer, but reemerge in the fall. I've got that interesting silver colored foliage. I've got easy flower on those. And that's a plant that would shine all through the cold season and then go dormant again when it warms up again next year. So that's a great one for that shade, part shade, kind of woodland garden area. If you can find some good cyclamens, there's a couple of examples of hardy ones. And that's the last one there. Give me a second and I'll stop. So you'll see right on there our web address, sunnysidenursery.net. If you want to email us, Nicole probably reiterated as well, you can always email us anytime, sunnysidenursery@msn.com. I'm here all weekend to answer questions. I'm guessing Mr. Smith was kind to me today and probably got a bunch of them during the class. So let me stop sharing here and we'll see if we got a few more questions. If I can find my, one second here. There we go. So now we're back. Well, actually, I'll stand up. Now you can see Lola again, right? So thanks again for joining us. I'm going to change this just a little bit. I will mention a couple things before we turn it over for questions. So like always, when we have classes here at Sunnyside, hopefully I taught you a few things today about the fall, winter season. We always have class discounts, so make sure you come down, do some shopping. I know the weather is not looking swell for tomorrow, but it's not raining today. And we do have some sunshine coming back this week again for fall. So come down, grab me, grab our staff. We're happy to help you. You got 20% off all the plants. We made this easy. I couldn't possibly pick everything here that turns to fall color and add it to the discount. So made it easy for you. Come down, do some shopping. You got 20% off your plants through next Friday, okay? Now tomorrow, if you're not sick of looking at me yet, you can join me tomorrow for bulb class. It's another one of my faves. We'll be doing spring bulbs tomorrow at 11 a.m. I will also be bringing in a couple containers from my house because I love planting bulb containers. So I'll be planting a bulb container or two as part of the class, doing that live tomorrow. And then 2 weeks out, next weekend, I'm going to my son's soccer game, so I will not be here. But 2 weeks out on Saturday is another one of my favorite classes. We mentioned conifers a little bit at the beginning of this class, but we will strictly delve in to the world of the evergreen state here in 2 weeks. So we'll talk about all kinds of cool dwarf, upright conifers of all colors and kinds on that day as well, okay? So before we do questions, I really want to thank Simone with the Ever Clinic. This is really nice of them to kind of help sponsor our classes here. Like I said, I think it's a great local community business that seems to care about everybody's health care. So thank you, Ever Clinic and Simone, for joining us today for the fall color class, all right? So let's do some questions, Nicole. What do we got left? What did Steve leave me with?
So Steve handled pretty much all of them. So I'm going to throw some things at you, give you guys a chance. If there's anything that didn't get answered, throw it up in our chat. I'm going to throw up a quick poll if you can let us know. We like to know where you're joining us from, if this is your first class, all that kind of information. So I'm going to throw this up real quick. And most importantly, like Trevor said, we're super grateful for the Everett Clinic. They're sponsoring 5 $50 gift cards. So for us to give away today. So if you're local and you come down here and shop, throw your name up in our chat real quick. First 5 people that let me know that you're local, we'll give you one of those free gift cards.
I'm local. I'm local.
Sorry. Not eligible if you work for
Not eligible. I forget.
So yeah, they're already starting to come in. Throw it up in the chat. Don't raise your hand. Let me know in the chat what your name is, and we'll have those here for you waiting. You're doing a great job. We've already got 2 taken. Let's see, 3. Sorry, Diane, you're a little far away. 4, 5, there it is. You guys did great. So if you were one of those 5, I'll let you know via the chat. Thanks again, Everett Clinic, for joining us today and for letting us give away free gift cards. Everybody loves free, right? So on that, I think there was a few questions that may have popped up. While I give you a chance to throw a few more up in the chat for me to ask Trevor, like Trevor mentioned, we've got some more classes coming up, which is really exciting, but also we're getting ready to set our calendar for 2022. So if you just found us this year because we've had to adapt for COVID and do all of these online, we're going to do our best to continue in this manner, even as we move forward and things change and open up. So in the next month or so, keep your eyes open and we'll have our brand new schedule for next year, which is really exciting. Hopefully some new topics on there, some of the good trusty originals as well. So keep your ears open for that. Also, we take a break from classes for the holidays, but we kick into wreath mode, and we do wreath making classes here at the nursery, but we're also selling them online and shipping them. So maybe you're not local, but you want one of our gorgeous handmade wreaths. You can see the pictures up online on our website right now, but you can also get one sent to you. Send it to, a family member as a gift. We're going to start doing pre-orders for those November 1st. That seems like far away, but it's not. It's going to be here before we know it. Or if you're local, come down and make one yourself. It's a really fun bonding experience. People use it as family time, company parties. It's a great hands-on, kind of get in the holiday spirit and make your own wreath for your front door. So those are good options coming up. Let's see. So somebody asked, now that there's going to be cold weather coming, are there things you should do? We kind of talked about this before, to protect some of your plants, specifically like pots. What should you do now that the weather's turning?
Well, again, if I speak to our, local climate, I don't think we ever get cold enough to worry about pots for the most part. Again, not to plug upcoming classes, but we're doing putting garden to bed winter class here coming up another month or so. And we'll go through a lot of that. Certainly, you're about the end of the annual time, if you're going to bring your geraniums and fuchsias or anything like that and try to save them for another season, I'd be doing that here pretty quickly. But if we've got hardy plants that are outside, I wouldn't worry about them at this point. You watch the weather. For me, if I see teens, that's kind of my rule. I'm not worried about frost. I'm not worried about 25 even, but I see something coming down into the teens, then yes, I might make a quick cruise around the house and say, okay, that's good. That's good. No, you know what? I'm going to put that in the garage for a couple nights, depending on what plant it is. If you've got a lot of zone 8 material, maybe some zone 7 material in containers, yes, probably watch that a little bit. But if it's in the ground, you've had it for a while, I do not think you're going to ever have to worry about cold temperatures doing any damage. Make sure with the containers specifically that you do not let them dry out and freeze. That's the one no-no. If we tuck our pots up next to the house underneath eaves, yes, we need to water. It's not like you got to water them like it's summer. I'm out there every 3-4 days, but I need to make sure they don't dry out and freeze. Now we got plant desiccation and we may lose a little something.
Excellent. And this works for other climates that are similar to ours, right?
Yeah. Cool. Again, if somebody's asking me that's in, upstate New York or Maine somewhere where they get a little colder, a little quicker and a little heavier winter, then yeah, you're going to be protecting a lot more stuff than we need to worry about in our little maritime finger of the world here against the water. It's just typically not that cold.
What are some good, like your top favorites for fall and winter interests that are good for hummingbirds or, just kind of the wildlife in general over the cold months?
Well, any of the things I mentioned that showed berries, I mean, you can go back and watch the class, look at that, the handout I put out, it mentions a number of things for berries on there. If I'm talking hummingbirds and specifically, the things I would look at are actually things that are going to bloom and produce nectar. I mean, mahonia would be at the top of my list. That's why I planted a couple of different species in my own yard in Everett. So I had something that bloomed here November, December, and another one that bloomed a little bit more in the January, February timeframe. So that's a really easy one. You'll see them visit over the winter. Gravegelia would be another one. The camellias are great. particularly the reds and the pinks, the real hot colors. I would look at some of those fall camellias as well.
This is a little off topic. We've kind of talked about it before in the hydrangea class, but do you have a quick possible answer for how you can tell if your hydrangea blooms on new or old wood? Are there any tips? Should people just send us a picture? How do we go about that?
Well, it honestly is a tough one without knowing the variety. If it is a round flower that typically are more in shade, those mop head hydrangeas, it could be either or. It will never hurt the hydrangea to prune it back. And you're going to find out next year. If you cut it back hard in March, it grows up, I got brand new leaves and I got minimal flower, then that's a note to you as a gardener. Okay, I've got an old school one that will not flower when I cut it back hard. If it's a cone-shaped bloom, all the PG hydrangeas and probably 90% of what we sell now for shade or round flowers all bloom on new wood. So I can do whatever I want to pruning on those and have successful flowering the next year. I will talk about hydrangeas at our pruning class coming up here before winter, but just keep in mind, I would always rather have you cut these back in 1st of March and not whack them back so hard in the fall. So I would rather have you walk out, cut the spent flowers off here in a month, deadhead it, so I don't have anything heavy that might break a stem, heavy snow, whatever. Yes, I would do that in the fall. Yes, I would look at the base of it and clean out dead wood and structure issues. But if I'm going to go from here and cut it down to start the season, I'm always going to mark my calendar that 1st of March time frame. That's when I want to go out and do my pruning back.
Last question I've got up here is, how do you take care of canna lilies through the fall and winter in our area?
So canna lilies, that's a great question. And that's another one where we'll be talking about those and dahlias and all kinds of fun things when we talk about the put in the garden to bed class. But real quick, you know, if they're in the ground, okay, you're probably okay leaving them as long as we don't get super cold. I mean, canna lilies are right on that hardy line around here. If they're in pots, that's definitely one I'd be a little more leery about leaving out in the landscape. So if they're in a pot, you know, tuck that again up against the house if we start to get cold, maybe even throw them in the garage. You can always dig those types of bulbs, the canna lilies, tropical calla lilies, dahlia tubers, we can go on and on. I could always just heave that up in the fall, cut the growth off, store that bulb, and then replant it after frost in the spring. I mean, that's the easiest fail-safe way to keep them reliably. I leave my dahlias in the ground because I know I've got great drainage. It's usually not the cold to me on a lot of that. It's usually probably a little bit of the wet issue in the wintertime. Make sure if you're keeping something like cannas around, get the fertilizer going on them early next year because that's a plant that really needs heat to kind of wake back up and get kicking for another season. We cheat here with the greenhouses and we can usually get them going a little bit quicker. But in the landscape, that's one you probably wouldn't see a whole lot of action until we get into May, you know, late April and May. Now we start to kick in as we warm up and get going for the summer.
Excellent. I think that covers all the questions that you guys posed to us. We always talk about it, but you know, things come up while you're planting, after you leave, and all of a sudden you can't ask. We're always here. Like Trevor mentioned, send us an email, sunnyside@msn.com. Give us a phone call. We're here 7 days a week. We're happy to chat. And you know, if you've got something specific going on, some of you have asked issues going on with your plants, send us some pictures. We're happy to do our best to help and see what's going on with your plants. You should have gotten a message from me if you were one of our 5 lucky winners: Constance, Carol, Carolyn, Monica, and Michelle. Congratulations. Thank you again, Everett Clinic, for helping us give away free gift cards. Everybody loves that. So thanks for that and sponsoring our class. Thanks for joining us, everybody. We hope to see you again tomorrow. Again, this class is going to be recorded. It'll be up on our YouTube channel later today and up on our website as well, and the class handout, so that way you can go back and you know, check out all this information. It's a lot the first time around. So we hope you'll join us again tomorrow at 11 for bulbs, and have a wonderful day. Thanks so much.
Enjoy the day, everybody. Get out there and get some gardening done today.